Welcome back. Today is day 5 of Figurative Language. I'm Miss Bailey McCrae, and we're going to put together everything that we've done this week. All right, guys, day 5 is here. We're still talking about figurative language. Our objective for the week, 8.4a, identify and analyze the construction and impact of an author's use of figurative language. So what that means is I want you to think about the construction of all those figurative language terms that we've been discussing all week, and then think about why they're being used that way. Today you'll have an opportunity to experience this firsthand. Our learning target is today I will create a paragraph that correctly and effectively uses the 4 figurative language terms I learned this week. I know I can use these terms when I can point out and explain the meaning of each term in my paragraph. Our definition of figurative language is words, phrases, or figures of speech used purposefully to emphasize or persuade an audience. The vocabulary we covered were similes, metaphors, personification, and hyperbole. Our specific definition for simile is a comparison using like or as. For example, when the girl did yoga, she was all twisted up like a pretzel. Metaphor, a comparison without like or as. Remember we talked about our mom being a volcano? Yeesh. Personification, giving human-like qualities to non-human objects or creatures or even ideas. So we talked about that lightning dancing across the sky and even the wind blowing. Lastly, we discussed hyperbole, exaggeration, meaning it can't be something you can literally do. So our example was, I walked 1,000,000 miles to exaggerate how difficult the journey was, no matter what the length. So our last assignment for today is for you to create a story with 2 examples of each literary term we had learned this week. So that's 2 similes, 2 personifications, 2 metaphors, and 2 hyperboles. I created an example for you. Here's a short paragraph that uses 4 terms, only once though. Can you spot them? One day at John Marshall, I walked into my class and my jaw dropped to the floor. The whole room was quiet as a mouse. My students were perfect angels. They were on task and reading their books without directions. The students' eyes were gobbling up every page. The underlined phrases are our figurative language phrases. So, the first one is my jaw dropped to the floor. That's a hyperbole. I can't unhinge my jaw and drop it. I'm emphasizing and exaggerating my surprise that my students were doing what they were supposed to without any directions. The next one was a simile. The whole room was quiet as a mouse. Now, that's an idiom, but we're all very familiar with that, I hope. Although, it does seem like a paradox. If you've ever heard a mouse, it does not move quietly. It goes squeak, 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 squeak. But for the purpose of this example, it's a simile. The next figurative language phrase I used was that my students were perfect angels. So, clearly, no human can be perfect and therefore cannot also be an angel. So, my students are compared to angels because their behavior was so unexpectedly good. And lastly, my students' eyes were gobbling up every page. So, that's personification because we're talking about eyeballs, and the eyeballs were eating every page of their book. So if eyeballs are literally eating, and if we know that gobbling also has a positive connotation where you're like, nom, 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 right? Then we must infer that the students were eating up the book with their eyes. So that doesn't actually happen. So What that means is they were paying so much attention that they were just in the zone. So, to review, what is a simile? What is a metaphor? They're both comparisons, one with like or as, one without, and they create meaning by comparing two unlikely objects. Personification. What is it? What effect does it have? It gives human-like qualities to non-human creatures, objects, or ideas. By humanizing these things, we understand them better and we create more imagery for the reader. Lastly, what is a hyperbole and why would someone use this figure of speech? Hyperbole is an exaggeration. We exaggerate things when we want to emphasize them. I'm hungry as a horse. I'm starving. We say those things to emphasize how hungry we are, and how much we need to eat at that exact moment. The next step is independent practice. So this is where I want you to go and type that story that we were talking about, okay? So what that looks like is this form right here, okay? So you'll submit it here, and we've got a spot for your name and your school. And if you do a really good job, I'll shout you out on next week's videos. And then you just scroll right down and the box will expand to match your paragraphs. I hope you have fun with it. I look forward to reading your responses. It's been so fun teaching and learning with you this week. I can't wait to do it again next week. Next week, we're going to cover one more term of figurative language, symbolism. And we're going to learn how to break down some word roots.